Welcome back, those of you still with us. In today's video, we'll first go over the statistics and then break down the top 10 worst shootings this week by number of fatalities. The cases range from a domestic murder-suicide in Houston where 2 sisters were killed by an ex-boyfriend, to a church shooting in Michigan that left 5 dead and 8 injured. If you appreciate these videos, please leave a like and subscribe for weekly updates on gun violence in America. Let's get into it. From September 22nd to September 28th, there were at least 590 shootings across the United States. 222 victims and 52 suspects were killed, totaling 274 deaths. 496 were injured. This week, Texas had the most fatalities with 33 dead and 43 incidents, and was also amongst the deadliest with a fatality to incident ratio of 0.77. Otherwise, it's just the usual suspects up there. As for the cities, Chicago once again had the most fatalities and shooting incidents. Notably, no Californian cities made the top 10, and the only shooting death in Los Angeles was a suicide. Turning over to some good news, this week, the No Shooting Award goes to Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, North Dakota, Rhode Island, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Honorable mentions go to Washington, D.C., Idaho, and Vermont, who all had shootings but no fatalities. Here are the leaderboards. Vermont still has the lead. Now let's dive into the worst cases of the week, starting at number 10. Number 10. Spokane, Washington. Around 8:45 p.m. on Wednesday, September 24th, Spokane police responded to reports of gunfire near East 34th Avenue and Havana Street, just blocks away from Chase Middle School. Officers arrived to find 2 men shot inside a black Dodge Journey in a driveway and a third man laying nearby with life-threatening injuries. Medics pronounced the 2 at the scene dead and rushed a third to the hospital in critical condition. The area was taped off for hours as detectives processed shell casings and documented damage to a neighboring home. The medical examiner identified the deceased as 37-year-old Terrence Willett and 20-year-old Emilio Vasquez. Court documents describe a love triangle confrontation at the home that escalated into a shootout in the driveway. Phone video recorded by a 16-year-old inside the house shows Willett and Vasquez seated in the SUV while the homeowner, 38-year-old Shelby Martin, stands at the driver's door. Multiple shots are exchanged. Vasquez appears to fire at Martin. Martin returns fire. Investigators recovered multiple handguns and bullet fragments in and around the vehicle. Police said the men knew each other and that there were no indication of an additional threat to the community. Families on Spokane's South Hill woke up to heavy police presence near the middle school and a neighborhood shaken by violence on an otherwise quiet block. 4 children were inside the home when the gunfire erupted, according to investigators. Counselors and clergy in the area have offered support while the police continue to gather statements and review evidence to determine the final charging decisions and the sequence of events that led to the deaths. Number 9. Reading, Pennsylvania. Just before sunrise on Saturday, September 27th, Reading police were called to the 800 block of Nickel Street after reports of multiple gunshots. It was 5:58 a.m. when officers arrived to find 2 men laying face down at the entrance of an open garage, both unresponsive and suffering from gunshot wounds. Emergency crews tried to save them, but 1 man died en route to the hospital and the other was pronounced dead soon after arrival. A third man, later identified as 31-year-old Raul Perez Diaz, showed up at the Reading hospital with a gunshot wound of his own around 6:30 a.m. Police later identified the deceased victims as 25-year-old Victor Ureña Yami and 21-year-old Victor Jimenez. Investigators determined the shooting erupted during an after-hours party being held inside the garage. Witnesses said Perez Diaz arrived from another late-night gathering and got into an argument with one of the victims before pulling a gun and opening fire. At least 20 shots were exchanged. Perez Diaz initially told police he fired in self-defense, but ballistic tests matched his weapon to the fatal shots, and witness statements contradicted his version of events. He fled before turning himself in days later and was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of third-degree murder, aggravated assault, and related offenses. Authorities believe at least 2 guns were involved in the shootout. Berks County District Attorney John Adams described the scene as a senseless act of violence and condemned the culture of late-night parties mixing alcohol and firearms. Nothing good happens after midnight, he said. The killings have shaken the Nickel Street neighborhood, where residents woke up to the sounds of rapid gunfire and flashing lights. Police and Crime Alerts Berks County are still urging anyone with information about the party or other individuals involved to come forward. Number 8. Eagle Pass, Texas. Just before midnight on Saturday, September 27th, gunfire erupted at the Kickapoo Lucky Eagle Casino, a sprawling resort complex only a few hundred feet from the US-Mexico border. Deputies were called at 11:45 p.m. after frantic reports of shots fired in the parking lot near Tierra Soberana Boulevard and El Indio Highway. When officers arrived, they found one man dead at the scene and several others wounded. A woman died while being rushed to the hospital. 5 additional victims were airlifted or transported to trauma centers in Eagle Pass and San Antonio. The victims were later identified as 58-year-old Marcus Antley, a retired U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent, and Alicia Sanchez, a mother of 4 from Dimmitt County. Police identified the suspected gunman as 34-year-old Kyrian Rashad Jones of San Antonio. Jones fled the scene in a black Nissan Frontier and captured hours later in Wilson County after a pursuit that ended with a pit maneuver and taser deployment by Texas DPS troopers. A handgun believed to be used in the shooting was recovered. Jones has been charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 5 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Authorities said the violence broke out during a late-night raffle event that drew a large crowd to the casino, though the motive remains unclear. Eagle Pass Mayor Aaron Valdez called the killings a devastating blow to the community, describing Antley as a beloved public servant and friend. Maverick County Judge Ramsey English Cantu urged calm and unity, saying local, state, federal, and tribal agencies are working to ensure public safety. The Kickapoo Traditional Tribe of Texas said it was heartbroken by the violence and has closed the casino while cooperating with Texas Rangers and FBI. The Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas also released a message of solidarity, expressing sorrow for the victims and support for the tribe in Texas. Number 7. Phoenix, Arizona. Around 9 p.m. on Tuesday, September 23rd, Phoenix police were called to a series of shootings near 24th Street and Southern Avenue. When officers arrived, they found chaos spread across several locations: a home, a nearby Burger King, and a crashed car. 3 men were found dead, and 2 others were rushed to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Investigators determined the violence began as a home invasion when 2 armed men forced their way into a residence, sparking a gunfight with the occupants inside. Police identified the deceased as 23-year-old Stephen Brooks, 40-year-old David Rashad, and 20-year-old Devontae Fletcher. Rashad and Fletcher were the alleged intruders who were shot and killed inside the home. Brooks, who was also struck during the exchange, was found dead in an alley behind the house. Witnesses told police a resident opened fire after one of the suspects entered with a gun, then retreated to a bedroom. When he heard a family member screaming for help, he came back out and shot the second intruder. 2 other people fled after being wounded but were later found and hospitalized. Phoenix police described the investigation as complex, involving 3 separate scenes and multiple victims. Sergeant Lorraine Fernandez confirmed that both suspects died at the home and that there was no continuing threat to the public. Residents in the neighborhood told reporters they heard bursts of gunfire followed by sirens flooding the streets. The department praised the quick response of officers and firefighters, while detectives continued to piece together how the confrontation unfolded and whether the intruders knew the victims beforehand. Number 6. Houston, Texas. At 2:30 p.m. on Monday, September 22nd, deputies were called to the Shadow Ridge Apartments on Old Walters Road after a concerned co-worker went to check on 30-year-old Jacqueline Arias Rivas, who hadn't shown up for work. When he entered her unit, he found 3 people on the floor, unresponsive and covered in blood. Responding deputies confirmed all 3 were dead from gunshot wounds. The victims were identified as Rivas, her younger sister 19-year-old Saida Machado, and Rivas' estranged ex-boyfriend 40-year-old Sebastian Rodriguez. There were no signs of forced entry and a dog was found alive inside. Detectives determined that Rodriguez had shot both sisters before killing himself. The Harris County Sheriff's Office classified the case as a double murder-suicide driven by domestic violence. Investigators said Rivas' 2 children, who lived in an apartment, were at school at the time of the shooting and were unharmed. Crime scene units collected multiple pieces of evidence, reviewed surveillance video, and interviewed witnesses to confirm the sequence of events. Autopsies are being conducted by the Harris County Medical Examiner to officially determine the cause and manner of death. Neighbors described Rivas as a hardworking mother devoted to her family, while co-workers said her sudden absence immediately raised concern. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez called the shooting a tragic reminder of how quickly intimate partner violence can escalate, urging anyone in abusive relationships to reach out for help. The apartment complex has since turned into a makeshift memorial with candles and flowers left outside the door where the 2 sisters lost their lives. Number 5. El Paso, Texas. Around 1:20 p.m. on Wednesday, September 24th, officers at El Paso Police Headquarters rushed outside after hearing gunfire erupt just down the street on the 1000 block of North Rainer. When they arrived, they found 4 people shot inside 2 bullet-riddled vehicles. All four were transported to nearby hospitals where 21-year-old Mia Molina and 27-year-old Victoria Whitman were pronounced dead. A 59-year-old man remains in critical condition. The shooter, 28-year-old Uriel Ontiveros, was found dead at the scene from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigators say Ontiveros opened fire on the victims before turning the gun on himself. Preliminary findings indicate the attack may have stemmed from a domestic dispute. Friends later confirmed that Ontiveros had been dating Molina, a former top model USA and an organizer with the local Cars and Canines charity. Molina was well known in the city's modeling community and had been preparing to participate in El Paso Fashion Week this November. The second victim, Whitman, was remembered by her family as the sweetest young lady, while friends flooded social media with tributes and disbelief. Police Chief Peter Pasillas and officers cordoned off the scene for hours as investigators processed evidence near police headquarters. 2 vehicles, both struck by bullets, were towed from the scene. Fashion Week organizers released a statement mourning Molina's death, saying she did everything with her full heart. El Paso's mayor called the incident a tragedy that shook one of America's safest cities. Friends and colleagues held an impromptu vigil at that evening, lighting candles for the 2 young women who lost their lives just steps away from the city's police station. Number 4. Dallas, Texas. Around 6:40 a.m. on Wednesday, September 24th, gunfire erupted at the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Field Office at 8101 North Stemmons Freeway. A sniper opened fire from a nearby rooftop, striking a transport van in the Sallyport while detainees and agents were arriving. Agents and ATF personnel ran back into the line of fire to pull shackled detainees to safety inside the building. 1 detainee died at the scene and 2 others were rushed to local hospitals in critical condition. Parts of the I-35 were shut down during the response. Investigators identified the gunman as 29-year-old Joshua Jan, who was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. According to federal officials, Jan used a ladder to access the roof and fired an 8mm bolt-action rifle he had legally purchased in August. Search warrants recovered notes and online activity indicating he planned to target ICE personnel, including a list of DHS facilities, ballistic searches, and shell casings engraved with anti-ICE messages. The 3 shot inside the van were identified as Norland Guzman Fuentes, who died at the scene, Miguel Angel Garcia, and Jose Andres Bordones Molina. Garcia later died on September 30th after being removed from life support. No law enforcement officers were injured. Officials called the attack a politically motivated assault on federal law enforcement and described the detainee deaths as a tragic irony. The ICE facility closed for several days and announced tightened security nationwide. Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson and Texas leaders urged unity and condemned violence, while the Mexican consulate and community groups offered support to the victims' families. The FBI and DHS said the shooter acted alone and the investigation remains ongoing. Number 3. Bunker Hill, West Virginia. Just after noon on Tuesday, September 23rd, deputies with the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to Quarry Road in Bunker Hill after a caller reported suspicious circumstances involving a red Chevrolet Silverado parked alongside the road. When officers arrived, they discovered 3 men dead inside the truck. Each had sustained gunshot wounds. The victims were identified as 30-year-old Dalton Weaver, 52-year-old Evie Omps, and 27-year-old Darian Clevenger, all from Winchester, Virginia. Investigators determined that an altercation broke out inside the pickup, leading to gunfire that killed all 3 occupants. Evidence at the scene suggested a double homicide followed by a suicide, though detectives have not confirmed which man fired the self-inflicted shot. No other individuals were involved, and authorities stated there is no ongoing threat to the public. The sheriff's office has classified the case as an isolated incident of violence among acquaintances. Number 2. Southport, North Carolina. Around 9:30 p.m. on Saturday, September 27th, gunfire erupted at the American Fish Company, a popular waterfront bar along the Cape Fear River in Southport. Witnesses described a boat pulling close to shore before a man opened fire on the crowded outdoor deck. He used a rifle equipped with a suppressor, scope, and folding stock. When police and EMS arrived, they found 3 people dead and at least 8 others injured, several critically. The gunman fled toward Oak Island by boat but was detained about 30 minutes later after the U.S. Coast Guard spotted him at a public ramp. Authorities identified the suspect as 40-year-old Nigel Max Edge, a decorated Marine Corps veteran and a Purple Heart recipient. Edge was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 5 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 5 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. Search warrants later revealed multiple firearms and a copy of Edge's self-written memoir in his home. Prosecutors say he has a history of mental illness, delusions, and conspiracy beliefs, and that he had filed numerous lawsuits against local agencies and even family members. He's being held without bond while prosecutors consider the death penalty. The victims were identified as 64-year-old Joey Rogers of Southport, 56-year-old Mike Durbin of Galena, Ohio, and 36-year-old Solomon Banjo of Charlottesville, Virginia. The shooting also left 6 others wounded, including residents and visitors from North Carolina, Virginia, New York, and Illinois, all since released from the hospital. The community of Southport, known for its quiet charm, is now left shaken as officials vow to review mental health and firearm laws in the wake of one of the deadliest attacks in the town's history. Number 1. Grand Blanc, Michigan. At 10:25 on Sunday morning, September 28th, worship had just begun at a Mormon church on McCandless Road when 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford rammed his pickup truck through the front door and opened fire. He stormed the crowded chapel with a rifle, shooting indiscriminately at congregants before setting the building ablaze with gasoline. Police officers were on the scene within seconds and exchanged gunfire with the suspect.
Drop the gun now! Drop it!
By 10:33, Sanford was dead. The church, engulfed in flames, soon collapsed as first responders battled both the fire and reports of possible explosives inside. Authorities later confirmed 4 parishioners dead and 8 others wounded, ages ranging from 6 to 78. Investigators say Sanford had long expressed hatred towards members of the Mormon faith and had called them the Antichrist. The FBI is treating the case as a targeted act of violence. Among the dead were 78-year-old Craig Hayden, a former bishop, 77-year-old Navy veteran John Bond, 77-year-old Vietnam veteran Pat Howard, and 70-year-old Thelma Armstrong. Dozens were injured by gunfire, glass, or smoke, including children. 2 emergency room doctors, both church members, were shot while helping victims, one of them repeatedly running back into the burning building to save lives. Witnesses described chaos and heroism as worshippers broke windows and carried the wounded outside while the sanctuary filled with smoke. Survivors spoke of seeing their loved ones fall beside them and of total disbelief that violence had reached their small-town congregation. Governor Gretchen Whitmer called it an evil act of violence, while the president and national leaders urged unity. The church released a statement thanking first responders and expressing gratitude that even in horror, faith and compassion prevailed. Vigils have been held across Michigan as members mourn the 4 lives lost in one of the deadliest attacks on the U.S. church in recent years. That was just this week, and there'll be more next week, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. I'll be here to cover it, so subscribe to stay up to date with gun violence in America, and please leave a like if you appreciated the video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe.